Greetings, beloveds, and peace be with you. I'm Reverend Mitzi, and welcome to Unity of Tempe. And if you're watching online, please come join us very, very soon. So we've been looking at each of the 12 powers this year. And who's familiar with I know pretty much everyone. Who is not familiar with the 12 powers? Okay, wonderful. So the 12 powers are a system of spiritual development created by Unity co-founder Charles Fillmore. And they are aspects of our divine nature that we can use in our lives. And while we each have these powers within us, the key is in learning how to use them effectively. And those of us who've been around for a while can say, I know all the 12 powers. But the key is are we using them effectively? Because I can tell you, I am not always using them effectively. And so refreshers are great, and I love that, Sandra, you are taking notes. As I said last week, that warms my heart, the cockles of my heart, whatever that's supposed to mean. Anyways, each of the 12 powers has a corresponding disciple, someone from Scripture, and color and location in the body, and affirmation. So today we're looking at the power of will, which according to Fillmore is the ability to choose, to decide, to lead, and determine. So the disciple is Matthew, the color is silver, and the location is the front of the brain. I don't know, Joe, if you were doing that accidentally or if you knew it already, because he put his hand right there. Maybe he had an itch, or maybe he was saying, I know where it is. So Charles Fillmore considered will the ruling executive faculty of the mind that gives us direction and purpose. Who wants direction and purpose in their life, right? A dictionary definition of will is a strong desire to do something. It implies determination, and we often say, where there's a will, there's a way. Yes, there's a way. And sometimes we don't consciously focus on using our will to manifest what we want. And instead, things arrive in our lives almost accidentally. I'm reading a wonderful book by Lois right now that our beloved Lois read. And she talks about this a little bit. She talks about how consciously she's manifesting things and sometimes unconsciously, but they show up in her life. And sometimes there are things we want, and sometimes, well, not so much, right? We're like, ooh, how did that show up? And why is it that we manifest things we don't want? Well, it's because we give permission to things we want and things we don't want in our lives, both consciously and unconsciously. So the key then is to be more conscious in our choices. So to help us in this endeavor, this morning we're looking at 3 aspects of the power of will. The first is being willing to trust God. So Julia Cameron says, you do not need to work to become spiritual. Thank goodness for that. You are spiritual. You need only to remember that fact. Spirit is within you. God is within you. Julia Cameron, author of The Artist's Way, for those who've forgotten about that book. So now, if the concept of God is a stumbling block, and for some it is, and that is okay, choose your own conscious, your own conception of God. What is God for you? Or it can even be a power greater than yourself, or the God within your higher self. I love this quote that I found this week from Thich Nhat Hanh. I saw it on social media. I think God is on earth inside every living being. What we call the divine is none other than the energy of awakening, of peace, of understanding, and of love, which is to be found not only in every human being, but in every species on earth. And there's this gorgeous picture that I couldn't include because it wouldn't show up, but it was of 2 bunnies lying up on the stars, looking up at the stars with their toes kind of connected. It was just adorable. But some people, they show that they get this, and other people's, even though the divine is dwelling within them, it is really covered up by a lot of muck, right? And we're like, yeah, you're not a reflection of the divine. It's so covered up we don't see it, right? So how do you become more willing to trust God, or if you prefer, your higher self? Well, by listening, by praying, by meditating. And this helps grow your spiritual intuition and access your divine guidance. And don't we all want that? More intuition and divine guidance. Willingness grows as you become more consciously aware of your spiritual path and follow it. And you make a commitment to follow it. Willingness grows by being in a spiritual community. Yes, give yourself a pat on the back. You showed up today. Yes, you did. You're on your spiritual path, and it's important to you. And you've received sustenance. Willingness increases as you apply spiritual laws and principles to your life. And of course, the key word there is apply. Yes. For no matter how well we understand those spiritual laws, seriously, we're doing the power of will again. Really, the key is, are we applying them in all areas of our life? Are we willing to use them? So there's a saying that knowledge is power, but you know what? That's actually not true. What? Knowledge isn't power? No, it's actually potential power. It's only power if we use it. So, knowledge plus action equals power, right? I mean, I could have tons of ideas and things floating, but unless I use them, they're just stored up there. So, why would we not be willing to use spiritual laws and principles when there's so much to benefit? Because of that pesky four-letter word that begins with F, fear. Yep, because of fear, which blocks us all at times. Anyone ever not had fear in their life? Never, right? So fear, we fear of change from that which is familiar. Fear of stepping out of our comfort zone. Fear of relying on a power greater than ourselves to show us the way. We believe we know the way because, gosh dang it, that is the way we've always done it. Why should we ask for our higher power's help? Oh, you mean we can get better results? It might be easier. We might see faster manifestations. We might be happier in the process. So if we want those benefits, then it's time for us to be willing to trust the God within. But that's not always easy, right? It's not always easy. It takes courage to let go and be led by Spirit, because it means that we and our egos have to give up something. And what is that? Control. We have to give up that control. And that brings us to the second aspect of the power of the will. Choosing willingness over willfulness. So Alex Grewald said, willingness is about accepting what is and responding in an effective or appropriate way. The opposite of willingness is willfulness, trying to control the universe and deliberately or stubbornly doing something you know isn't working. I love this because he doesn't say we accept what is and we give up. He says responding in an effective or appropriate way. Because when I first read that, I'm like, oh, accepting what is? That goes against everything I believe in. I mean, we're here to change and hopefully influence positivity in the world. But it says responding in an effective or appropriate way. So willingness helps elevate our consciousness and makes life easier, whereas willfulness does the exact opposite. Willfulness ignores spiritual laws, instead relying on self-determination, kind of like a little toddler. I can do it by myself. I do it by myself, Mommy. Daddy, I know you. I do it by myself. I do it. And then bam. Oh, maybe not so much. That didn't turn out so well. But willingness results in intuition and guidance. Willingness is courageous, especially when outer appearances seem negative. This kind of cracks me up, not in a joyful, happy, I'm so excited way, but in an arrow to the heart, in a piercing way, because I have seen so many of you and so many of our community, and some who aren't here today, walk through really challenging things. and have the willingness and the faith to keep on going on another day. I know some of you are going through challenging situations right now, and those who are out are going through challenging situations. So that's huge. Willingness is being open to God's inner guidance. We may be guided to do something that we know is the correct course of action, yet be unwilling to do it because of fear or anger or resentment or other reasons. Anyone? You're like, no, you should be doing that, but you're like, no. Kind of like Jonah. I got to do the Jonah series again. I got to do that Jonah series again because I love that. Yet each time we choose willingness over willfulness, we strengthen our power of will and conscious awareness that God wants only good for us. Now, perhaps like me, you've experienced times where you felt Spirit was calling you to do something and you resisted at first. Anyone? Ever? Yep. So God is affirming that that is true. I'm not sure whose phone it is, but we will just know that that's right. So I've had certain times like that, and I'm going to share one of them that I may have shared with you before, but I want to share it again because it sticks in my mind. And it was after the passing of a dear acting friend, Sandy, who was a member of the community where I formerly served as a minister. Now, I was there in that community for 14 years and on staff for 8 years, and I had no desire to ever return when I left for a visit. Suffice it to say, things had gotten out of hand and gotten very rough at the end of my time there because of some leadership things, and I just felt when I resigned that love was not at the center of the community anymore. I'm just going to leave it there, and that is really important for me. Love be at the center of any community. So when Sandy passed unexpectedly in late 2018, after he had just performed a stage reading, I think you came to it, Michelle, of Donuts with Jerry, a play that I wrote with Ron, I wanted to go to his service. A part of me was like, yeah, I want to go to that. And Ron was going and said, you know, you should come too. But there was another part of me that was like, no way am I going to that place again. I was in a quandary, for it was being held at our old community. And I wanted to honor Sandy, and I wanted to support Ron, and I wanted to not be stubborn about it, but I also didn't want to go to a place associated with so many overwhelming emotions for me. Anyone been there ever, right? Yeah, so you're getting what I'm saying. I felt like I'd worked through them, but I wasn't ready to return and say, wound me more, please. I wasn't that evolved at that point. And so on the day of the service, Ron said we'd need to leave by noon. Come 11:45, I'm still in my robe, and I'm a slithering, slobbering mess, just crying, feeling terrible about myself, feeling like I'm a failure because I don't want to go, and blah, 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 you name it. And so in all my messiness, I got down on my knees because I pray seriously when I'm in like that kind of a state. So I got down on my knees and I'm like, Spirit, just guide me. Just guide me. I feel like I'm letting down Ron. I feel like I'm letting down Sandy. I feel like I'm letting down myself. And so with the clock ticking, tick, 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 I hear this voice within. You have as much right to honor Sandy as anyone else. Walk in, hold your head up. You deserve to be there. Get dressed and get going. So I threw on my clothes, combed my hair, wiped my face, got in the car. And I was kind of apprehensive as we drove up. Yet, in the parking lot was this beloved friend of ours who also served as a minister at the church. And she greeted us with open arms and a warm smile. And she kind of ushered us in. And she acted like Secret Service detail to us, taking us to a seat and kind of shielding us from anyone else. Like, you will not be close to them. They are under my jurisdiction today. And so it was amazing because I felt so loved and so supported there. I just felt so comfortable on my first visit back. And then I went on another visit, and that was even easier. And today, that community is no longer in the same place. They've sold their building, and like many communities, they have another minister, and they're struggling after COVID to come back. So I just want to say that because I go through this, and I am glad that I listened to Spirit that said, get going. And I followed that because sometimes I could, left to my own devices, be very willful and stubborn. So before we move on to the next aspect of will, I want to talk a little bit about the difference between willpower and willingness, because it often gets confused. Willpower is a limited resource that is depleted with use, whereas willingness is more sustainable and even cultivated over time. Now, I have an extensive 12-step background, as many of you know, and that's taught me that if all we needed was willpower, it would be super easy to resist those yummy treats or whatever other nemesis we have in our life. But what do we do often? I'm not going to have the treats. Oh, nom nom, so tasty, right? Within the very moment of it. Willpower is like self-determination. It works in some instances, but because it's not divinely inspired, it can fail. Willingness is about surrendering to a power greater than ourselves, listening and following our divine guidance. I wanted to be stubborn in that moment and not go to Sandy's service, but I was willing to at least be willing. And that brings me to the third aspect on the power of will. Will is seeking the highest and best for all, not just for ourselves and those we love. I love this Brene Brown. You know I adore Brene Brown. Spirituality is recognizing and celebrating that we are all inextricably connected to each other by a power greater than all of us, and that our connection to that power and to one another is grounded in, say it with me, love and compassion. Practicing spirituality brings a sense of perspective, meaning, and purpose to our lives. Isn't that a great quote? So in the Bible, in specifically the books, the 2 books of Kings, metaphysically, they represent personal will that is either willing or willful. Has anyone read the books of Kings in Scripture? No. Well, let me tell you. Every king, it either does good in the eyes of the Lord or they do bad in the eyes of the Lord. There's no ifs, ands, and buts about it. They're either doing good or they're doing bad, or doing evil, as they say. And some greedy kings sought good only for themselves and felt they were justified in doing whatever they wanted because they were above the law and everyone else. Oh, how history repeats itself. Other kings sought spiritual wisdom and were willing and open to God's guidance and sought good for others. So when we start doing our inner work, choosing willingness over willfulness and seeking good for all, not just ourselves, we'll likely receive divine guidance and inspiration on actions to take. Now, sometimes that action may be just go, sit, meditate. Go, sit, pray. Go, be in your spiritual community. Go, make a phone call. Don't discount sitting and meditating or sitting and praying. They are viable action steps that may lead to and will lead to greater inspiration, divine inspiration on specific actions to take. That's because being willing is always accompanied by some type of action. Now that action may be just to be in the silence for a moment, or for a day, or for a few hours. That action may be anything that is calling to you. But as you do that, listen carefully. What is Spirit telling you? And also watch carefully for synchronicities that show up in your life and that signs that show up. Because when you're willing to trust God, ideas and divine guidance will seep into your consciousness. Now, I've also shared this story before, but you might not remember it. I was teaching a class one time where a young woman said that she was absolutely sick and tired of taking the bus, and she wanted to manifest a car. I just need that car, Mitzi. Just need it right now. And so I encouraged her to take a slightly different approach and look at when she was on her taking the bus every day, to see it as a form of ministry. We all have ministry wherever we are. Just because you don't have the title minister does not mean you're not in ministry. You all are. So I said, every time you get on the bus, see what you can do to just send your love to the people on the bus and just enjoy being on that bus with humanity. And so she did that. And she reported back that she started blessing every single person on the bus silently. And she started even talking to people, making connections, finding out about them, sending her love to everyone. Well, guess what? About 3 weeks, she had a car. Because when we start being in action and sharing our gifts, more comes to us. So what is God's will for us? Ernest Holmes, founder of a sister denomination of Unity, said, I know I share this a lot, but it's so important that you hear it. Anything that will enable us to express greater life, greater happiness, greater power, as long as it does not harm ourselves or anyone else, must be the will of God for us. That's such a beautiful way of saying that. So as long as you're seeking good for all with harm to no one, you're fulfilling God's will. Isn't that exciting? So I want to anchor this with a beautiful song that most of us know by Karen Drucker. And I invite you to if you just meditate on her beautiful words or sing with it or do whatever your soul needs for rejuvenation.
Will surrender to my greatest, highest good. I will release any fear that blocks my way. For every step I take is taken in pure faith, and I am stronger every moment, every day. My mind is willing and my heart is open wide. I trust my instincts and let spirit be my guide. I vow to live a life that's real and pure and free, as I continue walking in this mystery. I will surrender to my greatest, highest good. I will release any fear that blocks my way. For every step I take is taken in pure faith, and I am grateful every moment, every day. There may be walls, there may be roadblocks in my way, but I can choose to take a higher path each day. And now I know that what I thought was safe and sound was only habit and regret that held me down. I will surrender to my greatest, highest good. I will release any fear that blocks my way. For every step I take is taken in pure faith, and I am kinder every moment, every day, and I'm more loving every moment, every day. I will surrender every moment, every day.
That's our beloved Karen Drucker, who is a wonderful friend to us at Unity of Tempe, having given us permission to use every one of her songs. She even sent them all to us, so we just adore her. Let us say together, I am a beloved child of God, here to be an ambassador of good. And that's our Unity of Tempe motto, that we are beloved children of God, here to be ambassadors of good. Breathe into that. And I invite you to think about, how is Spirit calling you this week to be an ambassador of good? In which way? Who will you call? Who will you encourage? So it's now time for our tithes and offerings, our financial blessings. We take them to our heart and we fill them up with joy and peace. We know that what we share comes back to us a bazillion-fold. And so we are grateful, so grateful, because this does help us at Unity of Tempe to be here, to support us in renting this space and being here each Sunday. Let us say together, I am a joyful sharer of my good. I remember that as I give, I receive, and that God is my source. Yes, indeed. If you prefer to give by Zelle, the Zelle is unityoftempe@gmail.com, and PayPal is unityoftempe.org. And online, if you prefer to send a check, that's our address up there. We're just so grateful for those watching online also, who will watch later as this video gets posted. And we also keep every single prayer in our prayer box that is in there. Thank you. Every prayer in there, knowing that every prayer is supported, every prayer that has ever been in there, every prayer that will ever be in there. If you have a prayer that you would like to submit into the prayer box, just do so after service. Thank you, Kent. We bless these gifts. We bless the giver and the receiver and the stewardship of their use. Yes. So we partner with the Church of the Epiphany to support our local community. Matthew's Crossing Food Bank. These are some of the most needed items if you're at a dollar store and see some things. I think Jeannie, who brought in several items today, so thank you so much for those. And also, we are still collecting water. We'd think we'd be done, but it is still very hot outside. So we really appreciate that. We've partnered with Epiphany to give a lot of water this year, which has been wonderful. And you are important. You might think, I'm going to skip this Sunday. But you make a difference. And I do appreciate you coming and being here, because in order for us to continue to grow, we need to be here. Can't just be me being here. We need to show up to support everyone who comes and say, hey, how can we support you this week? How's your week been? If I hadn't have texted Dana, I wouldn't have known about, well, she actually texted me and told me, but I had a phone call with her, was able to lovingly send our love to her as she's going through a challenging celebrating time. That's why we're here. Not just for me to get up here and chat all week, but it's here to support one another, whatever you're going through in life, and to celebrate those joyful moments. So be with us next Sunday. I don't know what the talk is going to be yet. It's not downloaded yet, but come for spiritual upliftment to recharge and encourage you in all your endeavors, and share Unity of Tempe. Invite somebody. Joe.
In my heart, I want to pray for Muslim community tomorrow.
For what community?
Muslim community.
The Muslim community?
There's a lot of good Muslims out there, and they get blamed for what happened in 9/11. It's not the Muslims, it was a certain group that did it, but they're the ones still getting a lot of hate, even to this day.
Yes. So we lift up our Islamic friends and send our love to them on this coming up anniversary tomorrow of.
It is a sad day for a lot of people, too.
Yes. So yes, we support and send our love. Thank you for that, Joe. So let us say together our prayer of protection. The light of God surrounds us. The love of God enfolds us. The power of God protects us. The presence of God watches over us. Wherever we are, God is. All is well, and we are grateful.